From the archives of Shadowdelve, there's an observation I'd like to leave with you. Not because I've answered it, but because the longer I sit with it, the stranger it becomes. Some questions fade with time, others refuse to let go. This is one of them. So before we continue, I'd like to ask you something. Not because I believe I have the answer, but because I suspect every one of us carries a fragment of it. Why do we create? Not why some people become artists, not why some choose to write, paint, compose music, design, sculpt, or build. I mean, something much deeper. Why does the impulse exist at all? As you listen, I'd like you to think about your own answer. And when we reach the end, share it in the comments. Because I have a feeling there isn't just one answer, there are many. And perhaps each reveals something about who we are. I've noticed something rather peculiar. Every civilization that has ever existed left something behind: a painting, a song, a sculpture, a story, symbols carved into stone, monuments built by hands that turned to dust long ago. It didn't matter where they lived. It didn't matter what language they spoke. It didn't matter whether ocean separated them. Every one of them created. That should strike us as strange, don't you think? Because if creativity were merely entertainment, it would have disappeared the moment survival became difficult. Yet, history suggests the opposite. Some of humanity's greatest works emerged during the war, during famine, during exile, during unimaginable suffering, almost as though the darker the night became, the stronger the need to create. But why? I've wrestled with that question for years because the more I observed, the less convincing the ordinary explanations became. People often say creativity is self expression. Perhaps, but that answer has always felt incomplete. Expression usually seeks relief, yet most creators find none. Finish one project, and then another one begins demanding attention. Complete one story, and another one appears. Compose one melody, and silence quickly becomes unbearable. It's almost as though finishing the work was never the object. I've met writers who couldn't stop writing, designers who spent days adjusting a single detail no one else could ever notice, musicians who woke in the middle of the night because they were afraid of forgetting something they had heard only once. To an outside observer, it almost appears irrational. Years of effort, so little certainty, no guarantee anyone will understand, sometimes no reward at all. And yet, they continue. Not because they have to, but because something inside them refuses to let them stop. That's the detail I find most difficult to explain. Ambition seeks achievement, obsession seeks completion. But this feels like neither. It feels more like longing, a longing that cannot quite name what it is searching for. And that thought led me somewhere unexpected. What if creativity isn't moving us forward? What if it is trying to lead us back? Back to something we've forgotten, back to something we can no longer see. Yet somehow we still recognize it. Have you ever heard a piece of music for the first time and felt as though you had known it your entire life? Have you ever stood in a place you've never visited, yet it felt strangely familiar? Have you ever read a story and experienced the unsettling feeling that you weren't discovering something new, but something old? Why does that happen? Why do certain feelings feel less like discoveries and more like memories? The more I thought about it, the more troubling the question became, because memories usually belong to experiences. Yet sometimes we feel nostalgia for things we've never known. We miss places we've never been. We long for something we cannot describe, something beyond language, beyond reason, even beyond explanation. Imagine remembering warmth, but not the fire. Imagine remembering home, but not where it was. Imagine remembering a voice, but not who spoke it. Wouldn't that leave a wound, a subtle emptiness, a feeling that something essential was missing? Not enough to destroy you, but enough to follow you, enough to make you search, enough to make you spend your life trying to fill a space you cannot identify. Perhaps that is why beauty affects us the way it does, because beauty doesn't merely impress us, it reminds us. A melody can move us to tears, a painting can stop us in our tracks, a story can stay with us for decades, not because they are beautiful, but because they awaken something, something that was already there, just waiting, silent, buried beneath the noise. The longer I examined this idea, the more another possibility began to emerge. What if creativity isn't invention at all? What if it is remembrance? What if every act of creation is an attempt to construct something that once existed? Something that cannot be fully recalled, yet cannot be fully forgotten? What if that longing creators describe isn't the desire to make something new, but the desire to recover something lost? Perhaps a fragment, an echo, a distant memory. And perhaps that is why success never satisfies it, because success was never the destination. Money doesn't end it, recognition doesn't end it, achievement doesn't end it, but the longing remains. The longing makes us search. What is the next story? What is the next design, the next painting, the next melody? Always the next. Although the thing being taught lies just beyond reach. Maybe we've misunderstood creativity. Maybe art is not the destination. Maybe it is evidence. Evidence that somewhere deep within us, something remembers. Evidence of connection that once existed. A connection so profound that even after losing it, we still continue searching for it. Generation after generation, century after century, civilization after civilization, leaving behind clues, stories, paintings, music, even in architecture, in symbols, fragments of a search we barely understand. And perhaps Every story ever written, every sculpture ever carved, every melody ever composed, every painting ever placed upon canvas, every act of creation is the soul's attempt to retrace a path it no longer remembers, a path leading us back to its source, back to the connection that was severed, back to the one form where it came from. But that's only an observation from the Shadowdelve archives. Now, I'd like to hear what is yours. What do you think we create? Is it self expression, survival, evolution, or something much older? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Some of the most fascinating discoveries begin with a simple question. And so, until next time, remember the raven is always watching.